Hello, YouTubers. This is Joe here again of Joe and Paul. Paul's sitting here with me, but he's been feeling very poorly here in the last, 3 days, but the last day and a half in particular. And so he doesn't want to be included in this little update video, which is quite understandable. It's, is it gastrointestinal? Is it respiratory influenza? Is it pancreatitis? We don't know. He's considerably better, however, since he took a ranitidine, 300 milligrams of ranitidine here earlier. So we'll see. One hopes he can go to work tomorrow. He was off today. He came home early on Christmas Eve. Because he, was sick. He was sick on Friday, and Saturday wasn't too bad, but then he was sick again on Monday, so hopefully he'll get better. Now, to update, I went to Christmas Eve service last night at 10, I left at 9:45 or 9:40, but service started at 10:30, and there's just massive singing, and it was just very wonderful. Very wonderful. You got to stand up and sing, and the choir guy did, he's sort of honed these people in. Now, our previous choir individual was a wonderful, wonderful soul, but the last few years she'd been beset by some arthritic problems, but this guy now scampers around up and down the choir loft things, and he gets on the organ and his feet are on the bass pedals, and it's a very rich thing. My only thing that I don't particularly care about is that he tends to do a certain amount of show choir stuff with the choir, he does some community chorus stuff, and that's fine for that, but it's not easy to sing in a church. I mean, it's not easy to sing for people who are relatively untrained, and I've had a fair degree of musical training, but I don't necessarily care for syncopation and 16th notes and things and flourishes tossed in, and I certainly don't care for dissonant stuff. And essentially, if it's been written after 1930, forget it, guys. Just forget it. In any case, it was a great service, and I got home around about 1 o'clock this morning, Christmas Day morning. And then I was up again relatively early to go to the 10 o'clock service on Christmas Day. And this is one of the things our new, he's not new now, he's been here 5 years, but our rector does. He does this Christmas Day service. Although I had not been scheduled to read all through the month of December, which is unusual for me because I'm usually on pretty much every other week, I read today, and it was very nice. It was relatively small. We had it. The Christmas Day service fluctuates. We had 40 there last year on Christmas Day, and then the year before that was like 22, and then this year it was 16. But I think that just because of where the Christmas is, situated in the week, and a lot of the stalwarts were out of town and that sort of thing. So it has nothing to do with our rector, because he actually believes in the truth of the incarnation and the truth of the resurrection and the truth of Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. And unlike a lot, I can't say it's a lot, unlike a number of the more prominent voices in the U.S. Episcopal Church today, which I like to call the Looney Tune National Church, Well, because it is. It's a yes. Then don't call yourself a Christian church if you don't believe in the truth of the Christian church. Call yourself a club or something, but don't call yourself a Christian church. And unfortunately, there's a number of the folks that are running this outfit now that seem to think it's very trendy to say, well, the resurrection didn't happen, and the scriptures aren't the inspired word of God. And come on, give me a break. Just give me a very large break, especially at this time of year, and especially at Easter, even more so at Easter. Well, so I got home, and then, and that's good. And yes, I got home safely, and that's good. That's very good. Whenever you can arrive home safely, that's very, very good. And so my son and daughter-in-law and grandson are over at her folks' house today. They went to my ex-wife's last night, and from an email from my son that went, well, they got into this whole gun control nonsense, didn't they? And, my ex-wife, was a fan of the nanny state, don't mind that Constitution point of view. And then my son, of course, was pretending to be, well, he wasn't pretending to be upset about it. He was upset about it, but he was pretending to get his car keys out and leave. And then his wife, and I'm quoting from the email now, decided to start punching his buttons. And so, well, what do you do? What do you do? You're the only guy there in a room full of women who are your relatives one way or another, and your son, and I guess you just have to sort of
stand your ground.
Well, you can stand your ground, but sometimes you just have to shut up. And so I guess he was able to get them finally off on another topic. A similar thing happened to me today, not today, but on Wednesday at the so-called Bible study group. Now if we actually read the legitimate Bible version, which some of us do, more often than not, some of us don't. Particularly the individual who used to be a professor of Greek, and he reads the Good News Bible. Well, at least it's not the Message Bible. I mean, that would be I'd have to just leave at that point, despite breaking the chain of community on that one. But so we were doing this. Well, we had what passes for Bible study, now, and it was getting near noon, and that's generally when they break up and they're going to go eat somewhere. I don't eat lunch with them, not because I don't like them. But I don't want to spend the money, and I don't want to eat at noon. Then I can only eat one meal a day, and I don't want to eat that meal. So, but they got onto this whole gun control. Oh, well, it's just terrible. We can't let people have guns and all this. And of course, it's just, come on. First of all, it's a constitutional issue, and second of all, it's just a human rights, self-defense. You can't deny people certain means to defend themselves. And it's a way to keep the government from getting down on your case when push actually comes to shove. Because history has shown that when the armies are unwilling to finally fire on their own people, governments get overthrown. Now, I'm not advocating the overthrow of the United States government in no way, shape, or form. But should it ever come to that point, I dare say that the U.S. military would not follow orders to fire on the people. But ideally, we'll never have to test that hypothesis. So to get back to that, so you sit there and you listen to this and you try to, not show like you're about ready to throw up and have a stroke. And so far, I just stood up and said, "Well, it's time for me to go now. It's noon." Yes, I'm sure that was one of the milder interactions among people who had to listen to this school shooting nonsense. Well, all right. So anyway, our rector gave a couple of very reasonable sermons. Unfortunately, last night he likes to reference cartoons and popular culture, and I wish he wouldn't do that. I wish he would give a scripturally based sermon all the time, and don't drag in these poems from some suffering woman in Houston with a child. Or you just don't. No, a prayer is not a poem from a suffering woman in Houston. It could be couched as a prayer if she had written it as a prayer, starting out as, like Almighty and Ever-Living God, and we ask you that. But, a prayer is not some woman saying, "Oh, today I woke up and I noticed that things weren't going well." Well, of course things aren't going well. You're an unemployed woman in Houston, Texas with a disabled child. Of course they're not going well. But that's not a prayer, that's a lament. Now, a lament can be kind of, but don't call it a prayer. Anyway, so he did that. He does that a lot. And then we had to listen to some cartoon. We had to listen to Calvin and Hobbes story. I don't like that. I like preaching where you start with a biblical text and you expand on it, and then you come back, and it's this great expanding cycloid pattern of preaching. I grew up with that, and I greatly miss it. I don't want to hear trendy, popular culture references. Now, I will say to his credit that the last third of almost all of his sermons, he does get to the text. But my word, it's a long way around Robin Hood's barn to get to that. And that's his style, and he does so much good for us. And this is not directed against this man at all. And he let me participate in the day's service, and that's wonderful. And he had this really good point about, his sermon this morning was not it was 3 new sermons over the course of that's a lot of work for a guy. And he was talking about how, we look at all the Christmas wreaths in the church. He says, well, that's the way it is. Well, he didn't say this, but that's what I was taking away from it. But he was saying, human history has always been, you say you're going to obey God, then you don't obey God, then you disobey God, and then, over and over and over. It says, but with the incarnation of his Son, injected into the world as a human being, an incarnate being in the world, injected, the re-merging, not the emergence, the re-merging, that's my word, not his, of God into human history in an incarnate form. This broke the cycle of futility, the circle of futility. And so, I guess in a way, the appropriate symbol for Christmas would not be a wreath, but an extended bower of an extended rope of things as opposed to a wreath. That's an idea I'm going to have to bring forth, for consideration next year. So There it is. We've been watching some, well, we've been looking at this, potential storm is coming in today on the internet, and Paul's looking a little more functional, but he's holding his belly again, so who knows. We've been looking at a couple of our YouTube channels. Well, it's all self-indulgent, and it's video is a self-indulgent form. I'm going to have to ponder that a little bit more than I have done. But I think for now, it's best that we sign off. So, as we say, there it is. Alrighty, bye-bye.